Welcome back, everyone. As we approach the 1 year anniversary for Diablo Immortal, hopefully everybody is just as excited as I am. Now, a topic that I haven't heard anybody mention so far that I'd like to bring up because I feel it's very important if we're going to have a 2nd year anniversary. And this is, how do we get and retain new players to the game? Diablo Immortal has a lot of things that gate new players from entering into the game, and we're going to talk about a few of those today, but even if a topic that you'd like to mention isn't brought up, feel free to leave it in the comments below. First up, let's talk about something like Iben Fahd. This is pretty straightforward. You use aspirant keys to unlock chests, and you can only unlock so many chests per day. Now, there are some players that essentially open every chest, utilizing pay-to-win features to buy additional keys, or using platinum to open these chests every single time they can. So if a new player is to enter the game, they'll never catch up to the other players that are doing this, unless the actual players that have been playing become capped, meaning they have reached the maximum level in Iben Fahd's possible. And this is going to be some time before this occurs, but essentially these new players will always be behind. So what can be done to change this? Well, we can offer some sort of system where new players can open additional chests, but then they would need some sort of pay-to-win feature in order to even catch up. You could offer bundles that only available for people that have new accounts, but again, you would need extra days to catch up, and you would still always be behind, but at least eventually there would kind of be an end in sight. So is the best option something where you can go to the first room in the sanctum and you can actually level up your gems to a certain level without any cost associated. Now, some other mobile games use features like this as a catch-up mechanic. One of the other mobile games that I personally play allows you to level buildings up and get them caught up so that you aren't always behind, or at least you aren't so far behind forever. I can currently level any building in my city up to level 5, and there's other cities around that are, say, level 20 or 21, so this isn't going to let you get all the way there, but this system is designed to kind of give you some boost off the beginning, and so that you're not level 1 or 5% of the level of the other players. For Iben Fahd, since there are some players nearing or potentially even at, say, level 50 for some of these gems, perhaps letting new players unlock everything up to, say, level 10 or 12 might be somewhat reasonable in my opinion. At least get them a boost off the start. Second, regular gems are also fairly gated as well, right? So having the ability to level up regular gems, at least to some degree. I'm not saying that new players need to get these immediately leveled to, say, 6 or anywhere around that area, but if a new player could have regular gems leveled up to 3 or maybe even 4, this isn't going to be game breaking, right? They're still going to be a fair amount behind in regular stats, but at least they're not going to be getting CC'd just from anything all the time 100%. Because we know how bad CC is in Battlegrounds, and if they are launched into a Battleground with other players that have, say, 2,000 secondary stats and they have 100, this is going to be absolutely miserable. And I don't think anybody should have to suffer through that, even though we all ourselves have done so. Next up, we need to just talk about server Paragon levels. I have a good friend that's actually very high resonance, 7,000 plus, and their server Paragon level is behind that of the bulk of the servers that launched. Now, what this means is every time there's a new difficulty that comes out, everybody has their pre-farmed gear for the most part, and this player is hundreds of combat rating behind. And you could say, all right, well, they deserve to be because they're lower level. Well, the reality is that the way this matchmaking works in the Battleground is that them being 7k plus means they get placed on a team, and then the matchmaker puts a 7k plus on the other team, and they essentially consider that even because they both have fairly even resonance. However, they automatically do 10% less damage because their combat rating is behind, and it's essentially unplayable because they are just at a severe disadvantage every time the lobby is formed for about 10 days, if I recall. So, what do we do with the server Paragon? Do we make new servers? Do those new servers level up 3 or 4 levels per day so that they eventually catch up? Do the new servers just start at a certain Paragon so that once players hit level 60, they can increase much more rapidly and get caught up to some degree? I don't think it would be crazy for a new server to start with a max Paragon level of 600 at this point. To be honest, if you could just get launched into the final difficulty, if you were willing to grind to 60, willing to get to that level, you still have to farm set items, you still have to farm primary gear, and honestly, the Paragon level is the least important thing out of all the other stats. Your Paragon level gives you some extra secondary stats in your tree, and aside from that, most players aren't out there grinding the open world for sheer experience, right? You're grinding for potential upgrades on triple stats, you're grinding for mats for blacksmith materials, and so forth. So that brings us right into our next topic, and that is primary and secondary gear. Secondary gear is a little bit more straightforward since that isn't gated by anything other than your challenger's progress. Now, if these players have a server that's exclusive to them, then they may have difficulty getting caught up in challenge rifts for a while, but they won't be severely behind by that. You could give them some sort of extra crystals, or potentially even just leave secondary stats out of it, because like I said, players will inevitably catch up over time, at least to some degree in that. However, the primary gear and the sheer time investment that it takes to catch your primary gear up would literally be near impossible. Having a new player get to primary gear level 30 at this point seems absolutely daunting, and there's surely going to be new equipment levels that come out before somebody's actually capable of doing that. So we need some sort of mechanic there as well. A couple of things we could do with that. First off, you could just allow players to level their primary gear up to a certain level. For example, I don't think anything's going to be broken. If new players were able to level their primary gear up to, say, level 20, and even existing players, if this was just became a free option to level your gear up somewhere between 15 and 20, I don't think anybody's going to be super upset. You still have an enormous amount of mats to go from the rest of the way up to level 30, and it's obviously not something that people are super interested in doing. If you have level 13 or 14 gear, giving this person a jump ahead to 20 isn't going to change much, because they're not going to then decide they're going to go out and farm and go crazy and get all the way up to 30. So it's really not going to be that game changing in my opinion. So, all right, best topic for last, and this is going to be resonance. We're going to talk a little bit about eternal orbs, legendary crests, and essentially just the overall resonance that a player will be able to attain and how quickly they'll be able to do it. I think it's important for a new player to get somewhat caught up, as a lot of free-to-play and even casual players at this point almost all have over 800 resonance or so. So a new player, it does take some time, and there's a lot of new players that struggle to even break 200 or 300 resonance, and this really kind of makes them feel like they're not part of the group since they do so little damage in comparison. So, what's the solution here? Well, I really don't think that it's eternal legendary crests, because that's going to disrupt the market, and it's also going to devalue what people have previously spent. So I think that the added advantages they have will have to come through legendary bound crests, and that may allow them to get more gem power, whether you give these away in addition to purchases or perhaps just make them available to all, just bonuses for hitting certain tiers. You hit Paragon level 100, here's 50 legendary crests. Honestly, these numbers are going to have to be pretty big given how long the game has been out. These players need some means of acquiring this, otherwise they're always just going to feel like they're less powerful, and there's no point in continuing to try to catch up. I think this is going to be a pretty important part, but I don't want anyone to be upset. To lose current players over other people just feeling like they have an easier time isn't the idea here. It's really just to give a viable option to make things fair and to keep retaining and enticing new players, as I mentioned in the beginning. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.